Hi everybody, and welcome to a quick tutorial on seascapes. Very simple, quick seascapes, such as the one on my USS Missouri. I'll put a link to the video below somewhere. I was asked in the comments of that video if I could do a quick tutorial on how I did the seascape for it. So here goes. First of all, I'll go through the things you need. First thing you're going to need is a picture frame. It's good because it has its own surround, so it sort of finishes the base off nicely. This one was relatively cheap. It was about £1. Of course, you're going to need a ship to go on it. So here's a almost finished Tirpitz I'm working on. It needs to be big enough that there's space all the way around. That's going to be the size of the finished seascape. What you'll also need is some paints. Here's just a random ultramarine blue. It doesn't have to be a fancy brand. I've got a little bit of a green and grey. They'll just mix in with the blue just to add differences in the water. You'll need some shiny varnish, and once again I'm not going for anything top end. It's Tommy Walsh DIY Time Gloss Finish Yacht Varnish from Poundland. You will need, of course, if you're painting things, a selection of brushes. You'll need a glass of water and PVA. All these are relatively cheap. This is not going to be the best way of doing seascapes. It's going to be a relatively cheap and quick one. One more thing you will need is toilet paper. Okay, and this isn't the nice fancy triple quilted aloe and shea butter enriched stuff you'd use on your own derriere. This is cheap and nasty stuff, the sort of stuff you'd find in a budget hotel. The reason I want to use that sort of stuff is it's not got much of a pattern on it, and a pattern you'd have to get rid of during the process of making the seascape, and also it's not particularly strong. It tears and disintegrates easy, especially when it gets wet, and that's the whole idea. I want to use those properties in order to make the seascape. So you'll need some toilet roll. So the first thing you're going to want to do is pop the back out of the frame. We'll keep the frame for later. And what I want to do is attach the ship or seacraft or whatever it is temporarily. So a little bit of white glue, just small blobs. And then place it where I want, sort of in the middle, and leave that to set. Once it's affixed, it's not super strong, but it's not going to move. You need to mix a 50-50 mix of PVA and water. And just mix away. Then what we need to do is start building the seascape. So I'll paint some of the mixture on. And then lay on one sheet of the paper. Now I've got it a little bit covering the deck here. When you push it in, that's okay, it'll go up against the hull, and that can actually help form the waves on the side of the ship, the wake. Once it's down, cover it with the PVA. Once that's done, I'll paint another section. And lay another piece, and it will slightly overlap, but it's not much of a problem if it does so. And once again, cover that with the same PVA water mix Doesn't matter about the joins, they'll eventually merge together. What you do is cover the entire thing in that. And now it's covered entirely. Now that would actually be enough, but what I want to do is go over and I'll do a second layer. Then I can add a little bit more detail into the waves. So we'll go ahead and start that process. I'll start at the stern. And we'll go around again, cover it again. Okay, so now it's got 2 layers on it, and that adds all the waves. But now I want to add in a little bit more detail. There's going to be a wake coming off the bow and at the stern. So for that, I've torn up small strips of the paper, and this you can work if you want from a picture of the actual ship you're building, or like me, you could just go freeform and add more in. It just helps you to build up the water, so you can have something of a choppier appearance at certain areas and not at others. So more of a choppy area for a wake behind the stern. And then other strips as the wake coming off the bow. As I said, you can work from an actual image of the ship at sea, or you can just go freeform. Now, because it's cheap, nasty toilet paper, it deforms easily and it starts to disintegrate when it gets wet, which means very soon starts turning into more of a pulp than an actual paper, turning back into pulp. So that means you can push it around a little, manipulate it. Now, you won't be able to see much right now because it's all white, but once it's painted you will probably be able to see a few extra more defined waves. So I'll go on and add a few more of those and fast forward to the end. You might just be able to see now I've got a few lines of waves there. I've added some more to the stern to make it a little bit choppier, and I've added a little bit of wave pile up at the front. What you need to do now is leave this to dry solid, preferably for me that means overnight. Okay, so here it is so far. It's all nice and dry. I'm going to remove some of this excess. I'll do it neater later. It's just to stop it getting in the way. There we go. And then I need to remove the ship, simply because I'm going to start painting it in a moment and I don't want to paint the model. Now, I only tacked it down with PVA, so it comes off quite nicely and the paint has not been damaged. So set that aside, and this is now our seascape. So we're going to start painting. I'm going to have a big blob of the blue in here, a little bit of green here, a little bit of the grey, and these will just add into the blue to add different areas of colour. I will also add water. So I'll take some grey and just mix it in here, and then just start painting. Be as random as you like, it's all got to be painted at some point. And if you go over the same area several times, it shouldn't be too much of a problem because it just helps to blend all the different colours in. I'm going to go ahead and do this entire seascape. And then I'll come back and have a look what it looks like. Okay, so once the blue is all dry, you probably can't see it very well on the camera, but there are certain areas which are slightly lighter, some that are slightly darker than others. That's okay, because it's subtle. What I will do now is I'm going to dry brush. I'm going to dry brush with some white. Now, those of you who might not know what dry brushing is, most of you I think will do, but dry brushing involves getting a small amount of paint on the brush and brushing most of it off. I tend to practice on my finger. Very dry brush, almost no paint at all. You can go heavier or lighter, but the heavier you go, the more paint it puts down. I think it's better to do it bit by bit, and I'll just dry brush over the entire surface, and you won't be able to see necessarily straight away the effect it's having. But that's how dry brushing works. It's very subtle. The dry brush basically only touches or puts paint down on raised areas. You can use it for detailing all sorts of things. Cockpits, anything, engines I've used a lot on before, and it takes a while, but you build up the effect of raised areas being a slightly, in this case, lighter colour. So I'm going to go around and dry brush this. Okay, at this point I'd like to show the difference between this half here, which hasn't been dry brushed, that's just the blue, and this half here that has. And you can see that the detail's starting to pop a little bit, that those little wrinkles have turned into tiny waves. Okay, so that's the effect we're looking for. Okay, just gives it a bit more depth. So I'm going to continue now and do the other half. Okay, so that's the base dry brushing finished. Be aware, if you're dry brushing, it wrecks your brush. So always use an old one that you don't really care about. You are really, in effect, brushing a brush over sandpaper or a rough surface. So it is going to damage your brush. I use an old brush for it. Yes, and I do use my finger to take the excess off. But that's done now, so we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step is the gloss. Now, as I said, I'm using this cheap gloss yacht varnish. Use any varnish, use modelling varnish if you wish, but this is relatively cheap. It doesn't have to be a fantastic finish, just very, very glossy. Problem is, this stuff is a little bit stinky. Okay, and I'm going to need several layers, and I will gloss the entire thing. I'll come back to you when I've finished. And now I guess we're on to the final part. The raised areas where there's a lot of movement, I'm just going to use white paint a little bit. Not dry brushing this time, but actually painting just the really raised areas to add foam. So wherever you've got raised areas, you can dab the white paint so there's going to be a wake. Just brush lightly just to get the tops, and so on all the way down the sides, more wakes, and quite a bit at the back. General stern wake of the ship. Continue to do that on all the bits that you think need a little bit of foam. And so once you've done all the white, it won't look very good on camera at the moment because of the angle, but if I tilt it you can see the highlighted waves, the foam, and insert it back into the frame. there it is in the frame. All there is left to do now is reattach the ship, and you can use, once again, whatever glue you want. I'm just going to use PVA again. Now we know that it will fit well because, of course, this was built with the ship in place. A little bit more, and we insert ship into the base. So the end result looks like this. Not great because of the camera angle, but if I turn it like that, you can see it looks, well, to me, like a ship in water, roughly. As I've said, this is not the best way to do a seascape. It's definitely not the best. It's not the only way of doing a seascape, of course, but it is relatively easy and cheap to do. And for something this size, I think it's perfectly acceptable. If you want to go ahead and use resin and different products, then that's fine. It will probably end up looking better than this, but this, as a quick and easy, and as I said, keep repeating, relatively cheap way of doing things, I think is acceptable. So that's it for now. There's my tutorial on quick and easy seascapes using toilet paper, paint and glue, and a cheap picture frame. So all there is left to say is until next time, thanks for watching, keep modelling and have fun. Bye.